Welcome to day 2 of geography. My name is Mr. Anderson, and we're going to take a look today at important waterways around the world. But before we do that, let's jump back to yesterday's lesson, which was on the continents and oceans of the world. See what you remember here. We have several continents. What is, let me grab a pencil, what is this? Oh, I heard lots of people out there say North America. That is absolutely correct. That is North America. We learned directions yesterday. We know north is at the top of the map. So the bottom of the map must be, yep, south. So this must be South America right down here. Over here, we have a continent with 54 different countries. This continent is Africa. Africa, boy, it is tough to write with a cursor. Okay, these two are separated, these two continents are separated by the Ural Mountains right about here. This part is Europe. Over here we have the Colossus, the biggest, the most populous. This is Asia, okay? So we have North America, South America, Africa, Europe, Asia, and down here we have Australia. And at the bottom of the world, we have, you can't see it very well here, but it's there. We have Antarctica. Okay. Antarctica. Okay. Antarctica, frozen ice cube at the bottom of the world. Okay. So here we have North America, South America, Antarctica, Australia, Africa, Europe, and Asia. Okay, make sure you know all those. All right, the next thing we did was oceans. We figured this was the Pacific Ocean, good looking P. And here's the other half of the Pacific Ocean. We learned this is, in fact, the Indian Ocean. This is the Atlantic Ocean. And up here at the top of the world, all frozen in ice, we have the Arctic Ocean. I did mention that there is the Southern Ocean, which is down here, but we're not going to do much with that. Although it is on one of your little quizzes, but not your final test, okay? All right, so that is a quick review of the world. Let's get started then on what we're going to do today. Today we are going to do a bunch of seas, okay, important waterways of the world. Let's take a look at that same world map, only this time I've got everything filled in for you. Oh, I didn't write Asia up here. Probably should have done that, but you know where Asia is. Let's take a look at this half of the map over here. Let me grab my pen. What are we going to start with? Let's start with the South China Sea. All right, right here is the country of China. And we know if you're going down on the map, going in this direction, that is south. Okay, so this is China. This water right here is south of China. So this must be, you guessed it, the South China Sea. South China Sea, right here. Very important waterway. Okay, now what makes a waterway important? I'm talking about the important ones. What makes it important is who's using it, why they're using it, what countries surround it, how much traffic goes through it. All of these are the criteria that I chose to pick the important waterways of the world that you need to learn. So, South China Sea, what's so important about the South China Sea? Well, let me show you just a quickie little video on the South China Sea and what is going on there right now. What's going on there right now is making a lot of people extremely nervous, including one of President Trump's former campaign people, Rick Bannon, who predicts war in the South China Sea with China in the next few years. I think he's wrong. I hope he's wrong. And we're going to stop that for just a moment. I'm still learning how to do this, and there is a button that I forgot to push. So we're going to try that again. I got to push this button right there. And now let's take a look at
it. This is Fiery Cross Island. It's a little more than 1 square mile in size, and it's home to a Chinese military base. There's a 10,000-foot airstrip, an advanced radar station, a missile defense system, and about 200 troops. But the strangest thing about Fiery Cross Island is that 2 years ago, it didn't exist. And neither did the 6 other Chinese military bases that have been built on man-made islands in the South China Sea. If you look at this satellite image from 2014, you can see huge Chinese ships collecting around remote reefs in the Spratly Islands, an archipelago in the South China Sea. In this image, these ships are rapidly pumping sand and rock up onto the reef. They're building islands. And less than a year later, the Chinese had seaports, air bases, and buildings on their new island, and the world had taken notice.
We continue our look this morning at what China does not want you to see. The superpower is reclaiming land in 7 spots in the South China Sea,
adding on average more than 3.5 acres every day.
See, with these islands, China's trying to lay claim to one of the most important areas of ocean in the world, the South China Sea. The South China Sea is incredibly rich in natural resources. 11 billion barrels of oil, 190 trillion cubic feet of natural gas, and 10% of the world's fisheries. Most importantly, though, 30% of the world's shipping trade flows through here, to the booming population centers and economic markets of Southeast Asia. It's an extremely important body of water, and right now 5 countries lay claim to some part of it. Now, most countries base their claim off the UN Law of the Seas, which says a country's territorial waters extend 200 miles off their shore, an area called the Exclusive Economic Zone, or EEZ. Countries have exclusive rights to all the resources and trade in their EEZ. It's their sovereign territory. So, for example, any oil that's found within 200 miles off the coast of Vietnam belongs exclusively to Vietnam. But any area that isn't in an EEZ is regarded as international waters, and it falls under UN maritime law, which means everybody shares it. Now, every country in the South China Sea region uses this 200-mile EEZ threshold to determine its claims. All except China. China argues they have a historical claim to the South China Sea, dating back to naval expeditions in the 15th century. And they mark it using a really confusing border called the 9-dash line. Following World War II, Japan, who had dominated the entire region, lost all control of its surrounding seas. China used the moment to claim the South China Sea by drawing this imprecise line on the map that encompassed 90% of the South China Sea. It became known as the 9-dash line. And when the UN established the 200-mile EEZ in 1973, China stuck to its own line, refusing to clarify its boundaries and ignoring claims by other countries. Now that brings us to the Spratly Islands. It's a remote, barely inhabited cluster of islands currently claimed by China, Vietnam, the Philippines, and Malaysia. The Spratlys are both geographically and symbolically at the heart of the South China Sea. That's because any country that can claim the Spratly Islands can extend their EEZs to include them and gain exclusive rights to the surrounding territory. But it's really hard to legitimately claim uninhabited piles of sand, so a few nations have built small buildings and ports on their claimed islands, and even stuck a few people there. But China believes all of the Spratly Islands belong to them, which brings us back to why they're building islands there. Installing military bases on these new artificial islands took the dispute to a whole new level, showing how China is potentially willing to defend its claims with force. Now, this is about when the United States took notice. While the US has no claim in the South China Sea, it is the world's lone superpower and uses its massive navy to defend international waters. But China sees the US presence in the area as an encroachment in their backyard. When a US destroyer ship sailed just 12 miles off the shore of one of China's man-made islands in the Spratlys, China sent out their own destroyer and a patrol boat as a warning. China's building these islands in order to increase control around the surrounding waters.
Okay, so that's what's going on in the South China Sea. This is a dangerous thing whenever you have ships of opposing navies facing off with each other, And it happens at least yearly. We send American ships through what the Chinese claim, just to send a message to them, say, we do not recognize your claims to this area. Wars have started this way. Hopefully we won't have to go to war with China. Nobody wants to do that. Not a good deal. So that is the South China Sea, potentially a very dangerous place. Okay, let's go back, take a look at our map and look at the next one I want you to know. That is the Sea of Japan. The Sea of Japan, right here. These islands are Japan. It's not a big country. We'll talk in depth about Japan because it's a fascinating place. But here we have Japan. Here we have South Korea. And here we have a section of China and Russia. All right, Japan, one of the major economic powers of the world. South Korea, one of the major economic powers of the world. So what we have is a lot of sea traffic in here in the Sea of Japan. It is one of those important waterways because of who is there. Okay? I was a hero, sort of, in the Sea of Japan. I was there visiting Japan with a group of teachers, and they put us up in this, what was billed as a traditional Japanese hotel. And it was, I don't know how traditional it was. It was really fancy schmancy 5-star sort of a deal. But they did have the futon sort of mats that you slept on, and it had the low tables that I had to scrunch down on. I'm a big guy, I'm 6'3", and it was not comfortable getting up and down from that little table. It also had the most amazing bathtub I have ever been in my entire life. And sometime when we get a chance in a question and answer period, remind me to tell you about it. But anyway, my roommate and I, we decided, we were gonna get up early in the morning before we started all our seminars and stuff and go swim in the Sea of Japan, simply because whenever I'm at a faraway body of water, I try and swim in it, just so I can say I did it. Well, next morning, he's too wiped out. He's too tired. He can't get up. But I say, well, I'm going to get up. I'm going to go swimming. So went down to the beach, had my big fluffy white hotel robe on and my swimsuit and my thongs, my towel. And really early, but down there are a bunch of Japanese businessmen. They're all doing their little exercises. Now, this is something Japanese do. And I'll talk more about it when we get to Japan. But they were all really surprised, see this big, tall American come striding down there. And they looking over here curiously, what's this guy doing? Americans don't get up early in the morning, go swimming. But I think, okay, I've got an audience. I'm going to give them a show. So I threw off my robe and threw down my towel, kicked off my thongs, and ran into the Sea of Japan and splashed in and went swimming out and towards the horizon. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know, is this going to be really cold? Because sometimes you get a little shock. But, it wouldn't be manly to just put your toe in. No, if you're going to give a show, you got to give them a good show. Well, fortunately, the water wasn't all that cold. So I swam around for about half an hour. And then I came up, and by this time, the Japanese finished their little exercise session. And so I went up, showered, and came down to breakfast. As I came into the dining room, over here was a group of teachers I was hanging around with. And over here was this same group of Japanese businessmen, all in their suits and ties now. And when I walked in, one of the Japanese nudged the other one, pointed to me, and they all got up and applauded and bowed. And I thought, what the heck is this? Well, they're just a bunch of Japanese businessmen having a good time, acknowledging that they had seen me out there. So I bowed and gave them a little wave and walked over to join my traveling fellow teachers. And of course, they're just, what's going on? What was that all about? I had to lie. I had to lie, right? So I told them this great story about, I was up early in the morning and I had saved this little Japanese kid who was drowning. And it was really good. They bought it. However, I am the result of a strict religious upbringing, and I couldn't hold the lie. So I did have to tell the truth. Anyway, that's my close brush with being a hero at the South China Sea. Okay, what are we doing next? Oh, let's take a look at the Red Sea. Let me pull up the map. Where did my map go? Oh, there it is. All right, so we have the South China Sea right here, just south of China, is dead giveaway. We have the Sea of Japan right there, right next to Japan, duh, big surprise. Let's take a look at the Red Sea. Okay, Red Sea is right over here. Now, Red Sea has always been a pretty important waterway, even back in the ancient days, because what do we have right up here? This, of course, is Egypt. Okay, so Egypt. You had all the Middle Eastern empires that would use the Red Sea to trade with Africa and even trade down into India, or what is now India. Of course, it wasn't India then. So Red Sea was always very important. I always ask my students, what is the most famous episode of the Red Sea? And most people can't answer that question. Okay, so all of you good folks that go to Sunday school, you know the answer. This is what Moses parted for the children of Israel to escape from Egypt. Okay, probably the most famous Bible story in the Bible. Okay, children of Israel are in Egypt. They are being persecuted by Pharaoh. God, speaking from a burning bush, calls Moses to go set his people free. Moses goes to Egypt and goes to the Pharaoh and says, the Lord commands you to let my people go. And the Pharaoh says, yeah, not going to happen. These guys, they're my slaves. I need them to build monuments to me or some dumb thing. And Moses said, well, then you're going to be cursed. And God turns the Nile River to blood. Well, this gets Pharaoh's attention real quick, and he says, "Okay, oh, turn it back to water, and the children of Israel can be free." So the Nile returns to being water, but no. The Pharaoh changes his mind, and he says, "No, I changed my mind. They can't go." So another plague comes upon Egypt. I think it was a plague of frogs, and frogs are everywhere, in the streets, in your bed, everywhere, and driving the poor Egyptians crazy. And so the Pharaoh says, okay, I'll let them go. Well, this goes on for what is like 6 or 7 plagues. He keeps changing his mind. He's a slow learner. Pharaoh was a slow learner. However, the last plague was not one that you could just dismiss. The last plague was that the firstborn of each Egyptian family would die, including the Pharaoh's own child. So, sure enough, the mist of darkness, it's real cool in the movie The Ten Commandments, which I'm going to show you a clip of here in a minute. This mist comes through the streets and you hear all the screaming and crying because the firstborn of Egypt is all dying. At this point, Pharaoh says, please get out of here. I don't want you here anymore. So Moses leads the children of Israel out into the desert over to the Red Sea. Well, remember, Pharaoh's a slow learner. He says, no, change my mind. I want them back. So he heads out after them with his army, going to slay the children of Israel and drag the ones that survive back to be slaves again. And all of this is caught in one of the most remarkable movies ever made. It's The Ten Commandments. Came out in 1956. Now, something interesting is going on in American history in 1956. TV is suddenly becoming a big deal, and movie theaters all over the country are closing down. Because heck, you got TV and everybody thinks Hollywood is done for. Well, Hollywood, of course, is not done for. They come back with stereophonic sound and bigger screens and these epic movies. And the most famous one is the Ten Commandments. Here's Charlton Heston. He's playing Moses. Moses and the children of Israel are pinned against the Red Sea. And so what does Moses do? Let's find out.
The Lord of hosts will do battle for us. Behold his mighty hand. down through the midst of the waters. His will be done.
He opens the waters before them, and he bars our way with fire. Let us go from this place. Men cannot fight against a god.
Better to die in battle with a god than live in shame.
Praise God and down into it!
All right, so they go charging in to where the Red Sea was, and they get across. At this point, that pillar of fire that you saw, which was barring Pharaoh's way, disappears, and Pharaoh says, "In after them." And so the Egyptian chariots go charging in, and at that point, Moses, now on the other side of the Red Sea, closes the Red Sea, drowns the Egyptian army. Bummer, man. Okay, so anyway, that is probably the most famous thing that when people think of the Red Sea. However, it's positioned in such a place that it is extremely important and has become even more important over the years since we have the digging of the Suez Canal, which is the next waterway we'll talk about. Okay? So we have Sea of Japan, we have the South China Sea, we have the Red Sea, and we have the Suez Canal. Suez Canal connects the Red Sea with the Mediterranean Sea. Red Sea with the Mediterranean Sea. Okay, there's quite a story behind the Suez Canal, and I wish I had time to tell it to you, but I don't. Suez Canal, built by a French company a long time ago, okay, 1859. Now, this is not the first Suez Canal. First Suez Canal was, in fact, dug by the Egyptians. Yeah, there was a canal, you know, a couple thousand years ago. It obviously wasn't as big as this Suez Canal. It was, you know, it was only about 30 feet across and only about 4 feet deep because that's all the bigger their boats were back then. But when you look at a map of the world, you can see just what a savings this will be from having to go clear around Africa to have the Suez Canal. So built by a French company. Takes 10 years to do it. It's estimated that 1.5 million people worked on this thing, and lots of them died, mostly due to cholera. They would have thousands of people working on it every day, and keeping those people fed and in sanitary conditions, it just didn't work out very well. Plus the fact you didn't have the greatest bunch of workers. Egypt at that time was ruled by Britain and France, kind of consortium, and they would put pressure on the Egyptian leader to provide the workers. And so these Egyptian workers, the Egyptian ruler then would then require each town to send so many workers. Well, if you're the mayor of the town, you've got a requirement to send somebody, but you're not going to send your biggest, your best, and your brightest. You're going to send the local drunk. You're going to send the local thug. And so these are the people that end up digging this canal, and they weren't the greatest workers in the world. There was a few revolts against the Egyptians because nobody liked what he was doing, but eventually the thing did get built. Cost a huge amount to build the thing. Here's the dimensions of it: 120 miles long, 79 feet deep, 673 feet wide. This is a big, big ditch, and it is constantly being dredged and constantly being kept seaworthy. With the size of the ships that go through it, yeah, it has got to be big and deep. About 120 miles. Costs a lot to go through. A large ship will spend almost $500,000 to transit the canal. However, they have done cost savings that the savings going through the canal, you save over $250,000 going that route. Plus the fact you get through faster so that the ship can be used more to carry more stuff. Yeah, it is a huge, huge savings to shippers. And there's the stats of how many ships go through there. It takes not quite a day to send a ship through. Let's take a look at a run through the Suez Canal. I think I have it. I guess I don't have it here. Where did that thing go? No, that's not it. Okay, it appears to have vanished. I'll show it to you tomorrow. Kind of an interesting little thing. All right, so let's go then to the final waterway we're going to do today. That is currently the most dangerous one in the world. That is the Persian Gulf. Okay, Persian Gulf is right here. So we have the Sea of Japan, South China Sea, we have the Red Sea, Suez Canal, and finally the Persian Gulf. All right, so what is so dangerous about the Persian Gulf? Well, you have to look at the neighbors. Who is using the Persian Gulf? And let's see. Still learning how to do this here, ladies and gentlemen. There we go. Make it a little bigger. No, that didn't work. Let's try it again. Yeah, a little bit better. Okay, here's the Persian Gulf. What we have up here is we have Iran. Iran is a huge oil producer. What we have here is Saudi Arabia, a huge oil producer. What we have here, the United Arab Emirates, a huge oil producer. We also have Kuwait, Qatar, Bahrain. All of these countries pump oil from this enormous pools of oil, and it ships out through the Persian Gulf. Now, what we have here, and we're going to get into this big time when we get into the Middle East, is we have Iran up here, we have Saudi Arabia down here, and they really don't like each other. They've got a Cold War going on. The Americans back the Saudi Arabians against the Iranians. However, the Iranians have got a kind of an ace up their sleeves. This little area right here where the Persian Gulf enters into the Arabian Sea or the Indian Ocean. This little place called the Strait of Hormuz. It's only 21 miles wide. 21 miles wide is not very wide. The Iranians are constantly threatening to shut it down. If they don't get their way, they will shut it down. And it would be very easy for them to do that. They have got anti-ship missiles that could send a ship down very quickly and very easily. Oil tankers are big, slow-moving, easily taken out targets. The Iranians have plenty of wherewithal to sink those big ships. They could just put a few mines out there and shut this thing down. Now, they're constantly reminding the world that, hey, we have the capability to do this. Don't mess with us. Just not this summer, but the summer before, we mysteriously had 3 oil tankers have big explosions on the sides of their ships. Not enough to sink them, but enough to send a message that, oh my goodness, look how easy it would be. There was a 4th one that they found what's called a limpet mine. A limpet mine is the explosive charge in a magnetized casing. All you have to do is put it on a ship, and then it, whatever the timing is you set it for, it will explode. Well, this one hadn't exploded, and the Iranian Navy was very quickly out there peeling this thing off the side of the 4th tanker. They said, oh, well, we just saw a problem, and so we stepped in to save this tanker. They did not admit that they had set these mines. Well, everybody is pretty sure that, yes, you did set those mines. They are very, very capable of shutting that area down. If they did that, it's going to hit the world really hard because oil will be cut off. So Persian Gulf, flanked by two Arab nations that really hate each other, both of them very well armed. It's a tense place, and who knows what's going to happen there. Okay, so Persian Gulf is one you want to keep an eye on. Okay, so let's take one last quick look at the map, and then we'll shut down for this lecture. And the ones you need to remember: Sea of Japan, right here. Come on, where's my pen? Sea of Japan, South China Sea, and that's south of China. Persian Gulf, this is the really dangerous one. Red Sea, and the Suez Canal. Okay. Should have received a packet in the mail that's got a map that shows these things. Be sure you study them, make sure you know them. Tomorrow, we will continue our discussion of these important waterways. Tomorrow, we'll take a look at Hudson Bay, Gulf of Mexico, Caribbean Sea, and the Panama Canal. And I'll try and get that little time-lapse thing going through the Suez Canal up for you. Hey, it's a pleasure working with you. Study hard, and I will see you tomorrow.